my house! Go on, get out!
David, please, where do you expect me to go?
You should have thought about that before becoming my problem.
Please don't do this. I am carrying your child.
The afternoon sun burned brightly above the crowded streets. Neighbors rushed out of their rooms after hearing loud shouting from David's apartment. What is happening? Why is David shouting like that? People gathered outside. Then the door suddenly flew open. A heavily pregnant woman stumbled out. It was Mary. She nearly fell to the ground as she struggled to balance her large stomach. Tears streamed down her face. Her hands shook violently. Behind her stood David, the man she had loved for 5 years, the father of the child growing inside her. His face was filled with anger. "Get out!" he shouted. Mary stared at him in disbelief. "David, please." "I said get out." The crowd gasped. Mary fell to her knees. "David, where do you expect me to go?" she cried. "You should have thought about that before becoming my problem." The words hit her heart like a knife. Many neighbors looked away in shock. Others whispered among themselves. Mary grabbed David's leg. "Please don't do this. I am carrying your child." David kicked her hand away. "I don't care." Mary burst into uncontrollable tears. "After everything we have been through?" David laughed bitterly. "What exactly have we been through?" The crowd became silent. Everyone could feel Mary's heartbreak. David pointed toward the road. "Leave my house." Mary's voice trembled. "You promised to marry me." "That was before." "Before what?" "Before I realized I deserve better." The words stunned everyone. Mary felt her world collapse. At that moment, a shiny black SUV stopped in front of the compound. A beautiful woman stepped out. She wore expensive clothes. Gold jewelry sparkled on her neck. Designer sunglasses covered her eyes. It was Vanessa, the woman many people in the city admired, the owner of a successful luxury hair business. David immediately smiled when he saw her. The crowd noticed. Everything suddenly made sense. Mary's heart sank. "So, this is why?" she whispered. David remained silent. Vanessa crossed her arms and looked Mary up and down. Her eyes were full of pride. Mary understood immediately. Another woman had taken her place. The crowd began murmuring. Mary slowly stood up. She looked at David one last time. The man she had sacrificed everything for. The man she had loved when he had no money. The man who once promised to spend his life with her. Now he was throwing her away like garbage. As Mary walked away with tears pouring down her cheeks, she placed both hands on her stomach. "My child," she whispered painfully, "I don't know where we are going." Mary walked slowly along the dusty roadside, her small bag hanging from her shoulder. The afternoon sun was still shining brightly, but she felt cold inside. Every step was painful, not because of her pregnancy alone. Her heart was broken. The man she loved had thrown her away like she meant nothing. Several times, she stopped to wipe tears from her eyes. People passed by without knowing the battle she was fighting inside. She had no money, no home, no plan. Only an unborn child growing inside her womb. After walking for a long time, Mary reached a small bus park. She sat quietly on a wooden bench and stared into space. Her phone suddenly rang. It was her best friend, Grace. Mary hesitated before answering. "Hello," Grace said. Immediately, Mary burst into tears. "Mary, what happened?" Between sobs, Mary explained everything. Grace was shocked. "He chased you out?" Mary nodded, even though Grace could not see her. After 5 years? Yes. Grace became angry. That man is wicked. Mary cried harder. What will I do now? Grace sighed. The only thing I can think of is for you to return to your village for now. Mary knew her friend was right, but the thought terrified her. How would she face everyone? Many people in the village knew about David. They knew she planned to marry him. Now she was returning heavily pregnant and unmarried. The shame felt unbearable. That evening, Grace sent her a little money for transportation. It was barely enough, but Mary was grateful. The next morning, she boarded an old bus heading to her village. Throughout the journey, she remained silent. Other passengers chatted and laughed. Mary simply stared through the window. Several hours later, the bus arrived. The village looked exactly the same. The narrow roads, the small houses, the familiar trees. But Mary no longer felt the excitement she usually felt whenever she came home. She felt defeated. As she walked toward her family's compound, some villagers recognized her. Mary is back. Look at her stomach. Where is the husband? The whispers followed her everywhere. Each word felt like a fresh wound. When she finally entered the compound, her mother, Mama Rose, rushed outside. The older woman froze when she saw Mary's face. Then she noticed the pregnancy and the tears. Immediately, she understood that something was terribly wrong. "My daughter," she whispered. Mary could no longer hold herself together. She ran into her mother's arms and cried bitterly. "Mama, he abandoned me." Mama Rose's eyes filled with tears. "What? He chose another woman." The older woman held her tightly. "My child, calm down." Mary cried until her body shook. Her father, Mr. Rose, came outside and listened quietly as the story was told. His face darkened with anger. "After everything you did for him?" he asked. Mary nodded. The old man clenched his fists. "He will regret this." That evening, news spread throughout the village. Some people sympathized with Mary, others mocked her. One of her aunties, Auntie Felicia, was especially cruel. "I warned her. Girls who follow men around always end this way." Mary heard every word. That night, she lay awake on her childhood bed. The baby kicked gently inside her stomach. She placed her hand there and smiled through her tears. "My child, I don't know how we will survive, but I promise I will never abandon you." Outside, rain began to fall. Inside the small room, Mary cried quietly until sleep finally came. Unknown to her, even greater challenges were waiting ahead, but so were blessings she could not yet imagine. 3 weeks after returning to the village, Mary's situation became even more difficult. The little money Grace had sent was gone. Her parents were poor farmers who struggled to feed themselves. Every day, Mary watched her mother leave early in the morning to work on the farm. The sight broke her heart. Instead of helping her parents, she had returned home with another burden. One afternoon, Mary sat outside beneath a mango tree, staring at the road. Children played nearby. Women carried goods on their heads. Life continued as normal, but her own life felt stuck. Suddenly, she heard familiar voices. It was Aunt Felicia and 2 other women. They stopped near the compound. Their voices were loud enough for Mary to hear. "That is what happened when a woman trusts a man too much," Aunt Felicia said. The women laughed. "Now she has returned home with a baby and no husband." Another woman shook her head. "What a shame." Mary felt tears gathering in her eyes. She quietly stood up and went inside the house. She could not bear the humiliation anymore. That evening, she skipped dinner. She wasn't hungry. The pain in her heart was greater than the hunger in her stomach. Mama Rose entered the room carrying a small plate of food. "My daughter, please eat." Mary looked away. "I'm not hungry." Mama Rose sat beside her. "You have not eaten since morning." Mary finally broke down. "Mama, what did I do wrong?" Her mother pulled her close. "Nothing." "Then why is this happening to me?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I loved David with all my heart." Mama Rose wiped her daughter's tears. "Sometimes good people suffer because of the bad choices of others." Mary cried quietly. That night, sleep refused to come. The baby moved repeatedly inside her stomach. As she lay awake, memories filled her mind. She remembered when David had no money for rent. She remembered selling her phone to help him. She remembered borrowing money for him when he was unemployed. She remembered encouraging him when everyone else had given up on him. And now he was living happily with another woman. The thought hurt deeply. Far away in the city, David sat in a luxurious restaurant with Vanessa. Expensive food covered their table. Vanessa laughed as she showed him photos of a new car she planned to buy. David smiled. For the first time in his life, he was enjoying a lifestyle he had only dreamed about. He rarely thought about Mary anymore. Whenever her name came to his mind, he pushed it away. "I made the right choice," he often told himself. But deep inside, a small voice kept disturbing him, a voice reminding him of the pregnant woman he had abandoned. Back in the village, Mary suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She sat up immediately. Another pain followed, then another. Fear gripped her heart. "Mama!" she called. Her mother rushed into the room. The moment she saw Mary's face, she became alarmed. "What is it?" Mary held her stomach tightly. "I think something is wrong." The pain became stronger, much stronger. Mama Rose's eyes widened. The baby was coming, and it was happening sooner than anyone expected. "Mama!" Mary screamed as another wave of pain shot through her body. Mama Rose immediately rushed to her side. The fear in her eyes was obvious. The baby was coming, and it was the middle of the night. Heavy rain poured outside, thunder rumbled across the sky. The small village health center was several kilometers away. There was no car available, no ambulance, no money for emergency transportation. Mary cried as the contractions became stronger. "Mama, it hurts." Mama Rose held her daughter's hand. "Be strong, my child. Everything will be okay." But deep inside, she was terrified. Mr. Rose quickly ran through the rain to look for help. After knocking on several doors, he finally found a motorcycle rider willing to take Mary to the health center. The journey was horrible. Rain soaked everyone. The road was muddy and filled with potholes. Mary held her stomach and prayed silently, "God, please save my baby." When they finally arrived, the nurse on duty immediately attended to her. Hours passed. The pain became unbearable. Mary screamed until she had no strength left. Then, just before dawn, a baby's cry filled the room, a loud, healthy cry. The nurse smiled. "It's a boy." Tears rolled down Mary's cheeks. Not tears of pain, tears of relief, tears of love. The nurse carefully placed the baby in her hands. Mary stared at the tiny face, the tiny fingers, the tiny nose, the innocent eyes. The child David had rejected before birth. The child many people called a mistake. The child nobody wanted. At that moment, Mary knew one thing. She would do everything possible to protect him. "My son," she whispered softly. The baby moved slightly. Mary smiled through her tears. "You are not unwanted." Mama Rose stood beside the bed crying. "He is beautiful." Mary nodded. "He is my blessing." A few hours later, they returned home. Some neighbors came to congratulate her. Others came only to gossip. One woman shook her head. "Such a pity." Another whispered, "The father isn't even here." Mary heard every word, but she ignored them. Nothing mattered more than the little boy sleeping peacefully beside her. A week later, she named him Daniel. The name meant that God was her judge. Many people questioned the choice, but Mary didn't care. She believed God had seen every tear she had cried, every humiliation, every betrayal, every sleepless night. Meanwhile, in the city, David received news that Mary had given birth. His friend James mentioned it casually during a conversation. Mary had a baby boy. David remained silent for a moment. Then he shrugged. "So?" James stared at him. "So? That's your son." David laughed. "Ha! I have moved on." James looked disappointed. "One day you may regret this." David waved his hand dismissively. "I doubt it." But after James left, David sat quietly for a long time. For some reason, he could not stop thinking about the baby. His baby, the son he had never seen, the son carrying his blood. A strange feeling settled inside him. It was guilt. For the first time since abandoning Mary, David felt ashamed. But instead of listening to his conscience, he buried himself deeper in Vanessa's glamorous world. He did not know it yet, but every decision he was making was slowly preparing the road to his downfall. And while he chased luxury and pleasure, Mary was beginning a journey that would one day shock everyone who had ever laughed at her. The first few months after Daniel's birth were the hardest period of Mary's life. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because Daniel would start crying from hunger. Mary would carry him in her arms and try her best to comfort him. Sometimes she had enough food to eat, sometimes she did not. On the days she went hungry, she worried about having enough breast milk for her baby. There were nights when she secretly cried after everyone had gone to sleep. She would look at Daniel sleeping peacefully and wonder what kind of future awaited him. "God, please help me raise this child," she often prayed. Meanwhile, Auntie Felicia continued making life difficult. Whenever visitors came to the compound, she always found a way to insult Mary. Young girls nowadays don't listen. They think love alone can feed them. They get pregnant and become a burden to their parents. The words hurt, but Mary remained silent. She had learned that not every battle needed a response. One afternoon, Daniel became seriously ill. His body was hot with fever. Mary panicked. She rushed him to the village clinic. After examination, the nurse prescribed medicine. But when Mary heard the price, her heart nearly stopped. She did not have enough money, not even half. Tears filled her eyes. She stood outside the clinic wondering what to do. That was when an elderly woman approached her. The woman was known in the village as Mama Esther. She was respected by many people because of her kindness. Mama Esther looked at the crying baby. "What happened, my daughter?" Mary explained everything. Without hesitation, the elderly woman paid for the medicine. Mary burst into tears. "Thank you, Mama." Mama Esther smiled warmly. "One day, when God blesses you, help someone else." Those words stayed in Mary's heart. After Daniel recovered, Mama Esther continued checking on them. Unlike others, she never judged Mary. One evening, she visited the house carrying a basket of food. As they talked, she asked an important question. "Mary, what skill do you have?" Mary looked confused. "A skill?" "Yes, something you can use to earn money." Mary thought for a moment. "I know how to make liquid soap, body cream, and simple household products. I learned it years ago." Mama Esther's eyes brightened. "Then why are you sitting here suffering?" Mary sighed. "I don't have money to start." The elderly woman smiled. "Sometimes all a person needs is one opportunity." The next day, Mama Esther returned with a small amount of money. Mary was shocked. "Mama,
I can't take this. Take it. What if I fail? Mama Esther held her hand. You will only fail if you refuse to try. That night, Mary could not sleep. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The next morning, she bought a few materials and started producing small quantities of liquid soap. The beginning was difficult. Some people refused to buy from her, others mocked her efforts, but Mary refused to give up. Every day, she worked while carrying Daniel on her back. Every day, she prayed. Every day, she pushed herself harder.
Months passed, and Mary's small soap business slowly began to grow. At first, it was just a few bottles placed on a wooden table outside the house. Some villagers laughed when they passed by. Who will buy soap from her? She's just wasting time. But Mary did not respond. She had learned something important. Silence protects focus. Every morning, she woke up early, bathed Daniel, strapped him to her back, and worked. Her hands were often tired, her body was often weak, but her mind stayed firm. Mama Esther continued to guide her. She taught her how to improve her products, how to package them neatly, and how to talk to customers with confidence. Slowly, things began to change. One day, a woman from a nearby town bought Mary's soap and returned the next week. "Your soap is very good," she said. "I want more." That single statement changed everything. Word began to spread. Mary's products were no longer ignored. People started placing small orders. At first, she earned little money, but to her, even a small gain felt like a miracle. For the first time since David abandoned her, she could buy food without begging. She could care for Daniel without constant fear of hunger. Still, life was not easy. There were days when sales stopped completely. There were nights when she cried silently again. But this time, she cried with hope, not helplessness. Meanwhile, in the city, David's life was still glittering on the surface. Vanessa had introduced him to a flashy lifestyle. He wore expensive clothes, he visited clubs, he enjoyed luxury trips. Everyone around him admired his new life. But behind closed doors, things were not as perfect as they looked. Vanessa was not the gentle, supportive woman he imagined. She was controlling. She hated anything that reminded her of struggle. And David, who once had nothing, was slowly becoming dependent on her wealth. One evening, Vanessa threw a party at her house. Music played loudly. Her friends, women who called themselves slay queens, laughed and drank expensive wine. They mocked poor women openly. "A man without money is nothing," one of them said. "Love is for broke people," another added. David laughed along, even though something inside him felt uncomfortable. That night, when he returned home, he received a message from James. "Mary's business is growing small in the village." David frowned. He almost ignored it, but for some reason he didn't. He stared at the message for a long time. Growing business? He remembered Mary carrying his child. He remembered how she cried when he sent her away. He shook his head. "No," he said quietly to himself, "she cannot succeed." But deep inside, a small feeling of unease had begun to grow. Back in the village, something big was about to happen. Mama Esther had connected Mary to a small women's cooperative program in the nearby town. They were looking for hard-working women to supply natural household products. Mary applied, and for the first time in her life, she stepped into a formal business meeting. Dressed simply but neatly, she stood among other women. Some were educated, some were experienced, some doubted her immediately. But when Mary spoke about her work, her struggles, and her determination, something changed. The coordinator listened carefully. By the end of the meeting, Mary was given a small supply contract. That night, she cried, but not from pain, from victory. She looked at Daniel sleeping beside her and smiled. "We are not going to be poor forever," she whispered. Unknown to her, this small opportunity was the beginning of something far greater than she could imagine. And unknown to David, the woman he threw away was rising quietly, steadily, and powerfully. Mary did not sleep the night after she received her first supply contract. She kept waking up to check on Daniel, then staring at the small handwritten document Mama Esther had helped her understand. It was real. Her name was on it. For the first time, she was not just surviving, she was building something. The next morning, she worked harder than ever. She increased production, improved her packaging, and started labeling her products properly. Mama Esther helped her connect with 2 women in town who agreed to distribute her goods in small shops. Within weeks, Mary's soap was no longer just a village product. It was slowly entering town markets. Her income increased slightly, but more importantly, her confidence grew. She stopped seeing herself as a broken woman. She started seeing herself as a builder of her own future. Daniel, now a toddler, was growing healthy and strong. Whenever Mary looked at him, she remembered everything she had endured, and it gave her strength instead of pain. Meanwhile, in the city, David's life was beginning to shift in a direction he did not notice at first. Vanessa's business was under pressure. Her luxury hair brand was facing competition, and careless spending was draining her profits. But she continued her flashy lifestyle, pretending everything was fine. David, on the other hand, started noticing small changes. The allowances reduced, the gifts became fewer, the expensive outings became rare. One evening, he asked Vanessa a simple question. "Is everything okay with the business?" Vanessa snapped immediately. "Do I look like I am failing?" David went silent. That was his first warning, but he ignored it. Instead, he focused on maintaining his image. However, problems kept growing quietly. Some of Vanessa's suppliers demanded payments she delayed. Her debts increased. Her friends, the same slay queens who once praised her, began distancing themselves. But Mary, far away in the village, kept rising quietly without noise. One afternoon, Mama Esther visited her with an unusual expression. "There's an opportunity in Port Harcourt," she said. Mary looked surprised. "Port Harcourt?" "Yes. A distributor is looking for small but consistent suppliers. If you can meet the demand, your products will enter bigger markets." Mary's heart beat faster. It was a big step, too big for someone like her. But she remembered something she had learned. Fear does not build the future, action does. That night, she made a decision. She would try. Even if she failed, she would try. The following week, Mary traveled to the city for the first time in years. The city was overwhelming. Tall buildings, fast cars, busy roads. Everything felt like a different world. But she stayed focused. At the meeting, she stood quietly among business owners. Some looked at her clothes and underestimated her immediately. But when she presented her samples and explained her process, something unexpected happened. The distributor asked her questions, a lot of questions, and Mary answered them calmly, honestly, and confidently. At the end of the meeting, she was told to wait for final approval. She stepped outside the building with shaking hands, but hopeful eyes. For the first time, she was standing at the edge of a breakthrough. And far away, in another part of the city, David walked into a meeting room where Vanessa was arguing with investors. He froze when he heard the words, "We are pulling out." Everything inside Vanessa's empire was starting to shake. And David had no idea that the life he chose over Mary was beginning to collapse from the inside. Mary received the call 2 days later. Her hand shook as she held the phone. "Your products have been approved," the distributor said. "We want a consistent supply." For a moment, she could not speak. her eyes filled with tears. Daniel was playing on the floor beside her, laughing innocently, unaware of how much that single phone call meant. Mary knelt down and held him tightly. "We are moving forward," she whispered. From that day, everything changed. Orders increased. Her small workshop expanded to a slightly bigger space. She hired 2 women from the village to help her. Mama Esther stood beside her every step of the way, guiding her like a mother guiding a daughter into destiny. Mary was no longer just surviving. She was becoming a name. Meanwhile, in the city, David's world was breaking apart. Vanessa's business collapse was no longer hidden. Investors withdrew, suppliers demanded payments. Her luxury lifestyle began to crumble like a sandcastle in heavy rain. The house that once echoed with laughter became filled with shouting. One evening, David returned home late and found Vanessa throwing expensive items into a box. "What is happening?" he asked. She laughed bitterly. "What is happening? Everything is happening. My business is finished." David stood silent. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. Not pride, not confidence. Fear. Days passed and things got worse. The cars were repossessed, the staff left, the parties stopped. The Slay Queen friends vanished without explanation. Vanessa became angry at everything, and David became her easiest target. "You brought bad luck into my life," she screamed one night. David froze. "Me? Yes, since you came, everything started going down." That was the beginning of constant fights. The same woman who once looked like a queen of luxury now screamed in frustration over unpaid bills. David tried to hold on, but the lifestyle he once admired was now suffocating him. He remembered Mary again, but this time the memory did not leave easily. He wondered where she was, how she was surviving, but pride still stopped him from finding out. Back in the village, Mary made a bold decision. She registered her brand officially, M&E Naturals. The name carried meaning, Mary and Esther. Mama Esther smiled when she saw it. "You are building something real now," she said. Mary nodded. "Yes, Mama, I am building a future for my son." At the same time, Daniel was growing brighter each day. He was curious, intelligent, and full of life. Mary often watched him and felt a deep peace she had never known before. But peace does not mean absence of storms. It only means strength to survive them. One afternoon, Mary received another unexpected message. The distributor wanted her to supply a large order for a major retail chain. It was her biggest opportunity yet. If she succeeded, her business would move to another level entirely. But failure was not an option. That night, Mary did not sleep. She walked through the night preparing everything carefully. As she packed her products, she whispered to herself, "I will never go back to poverty again." Meanwhile, David sat alone in a dark apartment. Vanessa had moved out earlier that day without warning. She left behind only silence and unpaid debts. For the first time in years, David had nothing. No luxury, no relationship, no direction. Only regret. And slowly, memories of Mary became clearer than ever. The woman he once threw away was no longer just a memory. She was becoming a question he could not escape. Mary stood inside her small production space, watching workers carefully package the biggest order she had ever received. Her heart was calm, but her hands still trembled slightly. This was not fear anymore. It was responsibility. Daniel sat in a small chair nearby, drawing on paper while Mama Esther supervised quietly. For Mary, life had changed completely. No more begging, no more shameful whispers behind her back, no more sleeping hungry. But success had not erased her past. It had only healed it slowly. That morning, as she prepared to send off the products, a visitor arrived. A well-dressed man stepped out of a car and introduced himself as a representative from a large retail chain. He inspected her products again.
He asked detailed questions. Then he nodded slowly. "You have something special here," he said. Mary smiled softly. "Thank you." He handed her a new document. "We want to expand your contract." Mary froze. Her hands shook as she read it. It was beyond anything she had imagined. Bigger supply, wider distribution, more cities. Mama Esther placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are rising, my daughter." Mary's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them. "I just want my son to never suffer like I did." Meanwhile, in the city, David's life had completely collapsed. He now lived in a small, unfurnished room. No Vanessa, no luxury, no friends, only silence and unpaid debts chasing him daily. He had lost his job weeks earlier. The same colleagues who once praised him avoided his calls. Pride had turned into isolation. One evening, he sat on the floor staring at his phone. He opened old photos. There was Mary, smiling, happy, pregnant, standing beside him when he had nothing. His chest tightened. For the first time in a long time, he did not push the memory away. He embraced it, and it hurt deeply. He whispered into the empty room, "What have I done?" But no answer came. Days passed. David started asking around about Mary. At first, people ignored him. Then slowly, he began hearing things. "She has a business now. She supplies big companies. She's doing well." Each sentence felt like a knife. But one statement broke him completely. "She is successful." David sat down quietly after hearing it. Successful. The word echoed in his mind. The woman he called a burden had become successful, and he had become nothing. Meanwhile, Mary was invited to a Women Entrepreneurs Summit in the city. She hesitated at first. The city held memories she did not want to revisit, but Mama Esther encouraged her. "You must not fear where you once suffered," she said. "That is how you know you have healed." So Mary agreed. On the day of the event, she dressed simply but elegantly. She arrived at the venue with Daniel and Mama Esther. As she walked in, she did not notice the attention she attracted. She only focused on the opportunity ahead. But destiny had another plan. From across the hall, a familiar figure stood near the entrance. David. He was there as a small contractor helper, trying to survive by doing odd jobs. At first, he did not recognize her, but when she stepped forward to speak at the summit, he froze. The voice, the posture, the confidence. It was Mary, but not the Mary he knew. This one carried authority, respect, presence. The room listened when she spoke, and for the first time in a long time, David felt something collapse inside him, because he realized the truth too late. He had not just lost a woman, he had lost his future. David could not move. He stood at the back of the hall like a man nailed to his own shame. Mary was speaking on stage, calm and confident, her voice carrying strength that silenced the entire room. "I started with nothing," she said. "No support, no stability, just a child in my arms and a broken heart. But I learned that pain can either destroy you or build you." Applause followed. David lowered his head. Those words were not just a speech to him. They were his history, his mistake, his punishment. After the event ended, Mary stepped down from the stage. Daniel walked beside her, neatly dressed, holding her hand. He was bright, well-spoken, and confident for his age. Mama Esther followed quietly behind them. David finally gathered the courage to step forward. "Mary," he called, his voice weak. She stopped. Slowly, she turned. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Years of pain, betrayal, struggle, and survival stood in that silence. Mary did not look angry. She did not look emotional. She simply looked complete. "David," she said calmly. He swallowed hard. I didn't know you would become this." Mary looked at him for a long moment. "Become what?" "Successful, respected. She interrupted gently. "I did not become anything. I only refused to die in my pain." David's eyes filled. "I made a mistake, Mary. I was stupid. I was afraid. I was under pressure. I didn't know what I was doing." Mary listened without interruption. Daniel looked at him quietly, then asked softly, "Mama, who is he?" The question hit David harder than any insult could. Mary placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "He is someone from the past," she replied. David stepped forward. "Please, I am sorry. I know I destroyed everything. I was wrong. I should have stayed. I should have supported you. I lost everything, Mary." His voice broke. "I have nothing now." Mary's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "David, I loved you when you had nothing. I stood by you when you were nobody. But when I needed you the most, you chose wealth over loyalty." Tears rolled down David's face. I know. Mary continued. "I did not survive because of you. I survived because I chose not to give up on myself." Silence again. David looked at Daniel, the child he rejected, now standing strong, healthy, loved, protected. Is he mine?" David asked quietly. Mary nodded once. "Yes." David closed his eyes in pain. "I failed him." "Yes," Mary said softly, "but I did not." That sentence broke him completely. David fell to his knees. "I am sorry. Please forgive me." People nearby watched quietly, but Mary raised her hand slightly, signaling them not to interfere. She looked at him for a long time, not with hatred, not with revenge, but with understanding. Then she spoke. "I forgive you." David looked up immediately, shocked. "But forgiveness does not erase consequences," she added. He nodded, crying harder. "I know." Mary knelt slightly so she could meet his eyes. "Peace is not the same as restoration. I forgive you so I can move forward, not so I can return to what destroyed me." David whispered brokenly, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Mary stood up. "I hear you." Daniel held her hand tighter. "Come, Mama." Mary nodded. Before leaving, she looked at David one last time. "Take responsibility for your life now. Don't destroy another person the way you destroyed me." Then she turned and walked away. David remained on his knees long after she left. For the first time, he understood something deeply painful. Karma had not come to destroy him. It had simply revealed the truth of his choices. Mary did not look back again because her life was no longer behind her, it was ahead, and she had already survived the version of herself that once begged to be loved.